Tonight we're going to be regaled by tales, true or otherwise, by Dugga. Dugga has spoken to us once before, about, as we said, 10 years ago, and we are still talking about that evening.
Very nice.
I don't think anybody is going to be disappointed. So, without any further ado, I'm going to hand the floor over to Dugga.
So tell me, Dugga, why do boats float? It's got me, I don't understand. Why do they float?
We going?
Yeah, why do boats float?
What?
Why do boats float? He said.
I don't know, because they're round.
Tell me why.
Tell him why.
Why?
Boats
Because they're
float.
made of wood. Dig a hole in the ground, stick a boat and it'll float.
Why do you say what's going on up there?
We got the cooker going, putting some ribs in the boat. That's about 25 years ago. That's the Pearl. In the backyard. Used to have a great big fire going in the backyard there, you know. And anyway, can you hear me?
Yes.
When one night there we were cooking the billy there, you know, we used to keep all the old rubbish wood and burn it, you know. Anyway, it was one Sunday night, and we'd been putting ribs in that morning or something and cooking something. And anyway, we put the fire out, you know, and I was about 7:30. That's right. We were watching a current affair, not a current affair, 60 Minutes on Channel 9. We heard this commotion out the back. Goes out the back, and there's a bloody big fire engine there. The wind had caught the embers, and the embers had caught the grass in the paddock, and it was in danger of burning the house on next to the factory up the road down. And the fire brigade's there, and they squirted it with bloody water, and it went all over the bloody yard, and paddock made a hell of a mess. The next day there, we had to clean it all up so the people could park their cars in there.
It wasn't actually a paddock, was it?
No, it was a car park for Trodal and Coopers over the road.
We always called it the paddock. It was always.
And when the bicentenary was on, they when all the ships come in the piers, you know, thousands of people were down there and there was no parking. And David and Melissa put a sign up, parking, $2. Stood at the back gate there when people parking their cars, they filled the bucket up with $2 coins. Yeah, but anyway, that's the way it was. Yeah, there we go. Bang, bang, bang. Still got that dolly.
Nick was just saying that.
Hey?
What were we saying, Nick?
Andrew's in that photo.
It's Andrew. Yeah. Yeah.
Tell them what you were doing on the weekend, exactly the same thing.
Nick said to tell them about what you were doing on the weekend, exactly the same thing.
Doing that.
How many ribs did you put in on Saturday?
About a dozen.
I thought you said 16.
How many we do, Mick?
I think we had 9 in the village.
Must have been about 15, would it?
Yeah. It was a good day, my arm was sore at the end of the day.
I had this bloke, Paul, holding a dolly for me yesterday. Weighs about 10 pounds, don't it? Anyway, he said, I'll be right. You know, and anyway, he come in this morning, he said, oh, my arms are killing me. Anyway, so he said, I've got to go to work today. He said, I'll be back about 3 o'clock, but he never turned up. Anyway.
Dugga.
Margaret's asking you a question.
Tell them how you first started going fishing with Dada and that.
She said to tell them about how you first started going fishing with Dada.
Yeah.
Your Dada.
Yeah. Do you want me to start at the start?
Yeah.
Well, hey? I'm a Port Melbourne boy. I was born in Port Melbourne. And I've been in boats since I was my old man had me in the boat right from the start, you know. My first recollection of being in a boat was I had an uncle, his name was George, and he had a little 21-foot cooter boat, and it wasn't suitable for the sort of fishing they were doing, you know. So he exchanged it for a double ender called the Greta, and that's actually the boat I'm re-ribbing at the moment. And anyway, I can remember going with him up the Yarra, and it was moored up between the Queen's Bridge and Spencer Street Bridge. They used to, after they closed the Yarra off with the Spencer Street Bridge, there was, all the boats were parked along the side of it, derelict wharves. Anyway, we switched the boats over. It had a Calvert engine in it, you know. And I can remember going with him up there. That's my earliest recollections of being in a boat. But anyway, in them days, my life revolved around the lagoon down Port Melbourne. And right at the start there, when I was young, there were still 5 or 6 fishing boats in there, you know. And anyway, I seen a lot of things down there that I can remember from them days, and it was just after the war. I can remember that battleship, the King George V, being in the station pier on the east side, and she was that long, her stern was sticking out over the end of the pier. Then a few months later, there was 3 big aircraft carriers come in there, you know, the Implacable, the Indefatigable and the Glory. And, you know, and then about a year or so later, there was 2 big American cruisers come in the Princess Pier. And I found out on Facebook that they were called the Birmingham and the Duluth. But I can remember going down there with my mother in the morning. They sailed about 8 o'clock, and there was thousands of people down there. You couldn't move. And the ships on the pier, people were chucking streamers to them. All the girls were kissing the American sailors, you know, and on the quarter decks of the 2 ships, they had their bands, and they were playing Anchors Away, you know. Never forget it. Tugs pulling them out the pier and turning around with the bands kept playing, and the Star Spangled Banner. You never forget stuff like that, you know. But anyway, getting back to the lagoon, you know, in them early days, it was just after the war and petrol was rationed, so they still had pretty big sails in the boats, you know. And they used to go out mashing flathead in the bay with baited nets. There was tons of fish in them days, but what they used to do, they used to catch flathead because they were cheap and people bought them. They'd go out early of a morning, about 7 o'clock, and get home about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, go alongside the pier at the lagoon, and be crowds of people down there. Flathead, 4 bob a dozen, no scales, 4 bob a dozen, 3 for 2 bob, shilling each, bigger ones. And I can remember they used to chuck the 2 bobs in a bucket. They used to go home with a bucket full of 2 bobs, you know, and that went on. That went on for quite a few years. And but when I was going to school, as soon as I got out of school, my mother would get me and we'd go down the lagoon and sit down the beach and watch them coming home. We'd see them coming from behind Williamstown, all with their sails up, you know. And yeah, but it was good, you know. And anyway, I grew up, I got a bit older, and then I was into it. Used to go all holidays, go fishing with them every day and that. And I used to go down there when I got a bit older. I used to make billy carts. So I'd go down there and my old man would roll up about 20 parcels of flathead and I'd stick them in the billy cart and off I'd go round the pubs flogging the flathead, the 4 bob a dozen, you know. Anyway, I used to get the billy cart too when the weather was bad and we couldn't go fishing, I'd go along the beach, getting beer bottles and plonk bottles, you know, and used to wait till we got a big heap of them and take them round in Knott Street round the bottle yard and sell them 10p a dozen. We used to get for them, you know. Yeah, and I saved that money up. I bought my first bike with that, 28 pound it cost me, a Melbourne Start, you know. Yeah, but anyway, time went by and we started getting older. And in 1951, in February 1951, we got this gale. And all the boats in the lagoon got swamped or smashed up. When it was all over, the only boat left afloat in the lagoon was my old man's boat, the Volunteer. And the other one, the Greta, belonged to my uncle. The one I got in the backyard at the moment, it sank. But what happened when it sank, the water surge got under the deck and lifted the deck off it. So it got away from the moorings, but it washed ashore, you know, up alongside the lagoon. Luckily, it missed the end of the pier. Anyway, they pulled it up on the beach, and it was up on the beach for about a year. They were put it back together again, you know. That's the night that Nirana went ashore, up in Fisherman's Bend. There was the Tasmanian ferry was laid up there, you know. She went ashore, and yeah. And I had an old mate of mine. He lived up there, Charlie Strong, and he used to. You should know him. He used to go to your meetings with his little boats. He used to do a bit of boat building, boat repairs, and he said to his missus, "Have a look, it's coming up in our backyard." Because he was right into that, you know. But anyway, yeah, so anyway, when I was 13, I was 14 in August, but when I was 13, I left school and I went fishing with my old man, you know, full time, you know. And we was going catching flathead and selling them and that, and, you know, we used to do a bit of long lining but there was only a couple of boats left in the lagoon then, and anyway, the years went by and we started. What happened? The scallop boats got in the bay, and down where we were in the bay, it was the end of the flathead. They destroyed the bottom. They dug all the sea grapes up out off Werribee and dug all the reefs up, and you know, and done a hell of a lot of damage. There was a lot of reefs out in the deep water, you know. They destroyed them, you know. Anyway, we used to in the summertime we used to go hooking whiting and hooking snapper out off Point Cook. We went out one day, and there was 4 of us in the boat, and we went in out off the Point Cook flying jetty, out the Sheoak we called it, and we hooked 2 boxes of whiting, and then when the wind freshened come southerly, we went out in the deeper water out off Point Cook. We used to call it the Rubbly, and I got up on the deck and dropped the anchor, and I had my cousin George with me and my old man and one of my mates, and he chucked the line over, and before the boat come on the anchor, he had a snapper like that, you know. Anyway, we started hooking them. We had half a box of whitebait, and we started hooking the snapper, 2 at a time, as fast as you could pull them up, and we hooked 16 boxes of snapper that afternoon. We had 2 boxes of white. You never see nothing like it. You could see the snapper under the boat. It was 60 feet of water. You could see the snapper under the boat. If you put the line down, they wouldn't touch it. As soon as it went out of sight, bang, you know. There was silver brim. We were hooking silver brim and pike. It was just alive with fish, you know. And we got them there for must have been a week or so, you know. And yeah, and anyway, every year we used to go back there. We used to get them, but not in that quantity. Me and my old man, we went one year in October, was blowing hard southwesterly, and we went down the pier and we caught a box of pilchards. My old man says, "Come on." I said, "What's going on?" He says, "Come, we'll go down to Rubley." I said, "What?" I said, "Have a look at the weather." He says, "Never mind about that." So we went down there, just the two of us. We got there, chucked the line in, bang. It was on, like this, big ones, 3-4 kilos. We hooked 90, you know, yeah. And anyway, yeah. But we went back a couple of times more after that, you know, the same week, and we got half a dozen or something. And the first day we must have been dropped right on top of them, you know. Yeah, but there was fish, there was that much fish. There was tons of it everywhere, you know, and we started going down Point Cook and sleeping in the boat, and we started getting big snapper in the gummy nets, 5-inch nets. So we thought maybe if you made to get a bigger mash, make them deeper, you know, you might get more. So we got some 6-inch mash, got some 6-inch mash made, and it was about as deep as that wall, where them blinds are over there, you know. Oh, did it make a mess of the snapper? We got a photograph home. We got that many snapper that day. We reckon there was about 3.5 tonne. Like it was blowing hard easterly the night before, but the next morning it went to a flat calm, luckily. And anyway, by the time we finished, we had that much snapper in the boat with the nets. We had the mast laying on the deck of the boat, on the you know, alongside the combings. On the way home, the crown on the top of the mast would drag it in the water. We put the tent up to keep the water out the boat. She was full, you know. Anyway, when I got home, there used to be a bloke named Clive Waters. I don't know if any of you can remember him, but he used to do the news and that, not the weather report, the traffic report of a morning, you know. But he's a good mate of my old man, so he saw us there and come down the pier with all these fish. He put it over 3UZ, you know. Anyway, it was on. The people started coming down, a quid each. 600 quid, 600 pounds worth we sold. I'd never ever sold fish like that before. We might have got 20 quid or something, you know, but, you know, a pound each, no weight, scales or nothing, big snapper like this, yeah. Anyway, that's the way it was. And where we used to catch them snapper, it's called the She Oak Reef. It's out off the flying school. And it's very shallow ground, and it goes deep quickly. If you don't know where it is, you'll go high and dry on it. But inside of it was what we call the gutter, and it used to be sandy. And you could go in there at night time and drop the anchor, the good holding ground on the sand, and it'd blow hard easterly all night, and it wouldn't hurt you, but it'd be calm in there behind the reef. Anyway, I went down there one night and we had pike nets in the boat. We shot the pike nets, and it was me and my old man and this mate of mine. His name was Vinnie McNamara, and he had a couple of rods and some nice fresh pilchards. And we got in there, you could see the bottom, and the bottom looked like corrugated roofing, you know, but you know how the sand gets? Just hard sand. You know, and he's baiting his line up and said, "You're wasting your time, mate. You'll catch nothing on that, you know." And we're sitting there, and obviously the wind died away to nothing, and obviously it was going to be novelty the next morning. The sun went down in a big red ball, clear sky, a beautiful night. Anyway, we're sitting there and the sun's just going, you know, and his linesman, we're sitting there having a cup of tea, having something to eat. It's like both these lines went, and one of the rods went overboard, you know, so he grabbed the other rod and he started pulling it in and it got off. Anyway, by this time the sun had gone, it was starting to get dark. And I said to him, we'll get the grapple and see if we can get your rod. So anyway, I chucked the grapple in. I could feel fish hitting the rope. And I thought, what's going on here, you know? And by this time it's dark, so we got the spotlight out, you know? And we put the spotlight on, and you never see nothing like it. There was literally thousands and thousands of big snapper swimming under the boat. They were coming from Point Cook, and they were heading down towards Werribee along the shore, you know? And they were just packed like sardines like that, and they're only going slow. You could see their tails going like this, and every now and again one would turn over, you know, like that, and you know, and we had this beautiful fresh bait, and we were dangling in front of them, and they wouldn't even look at it. We even got the boat hook, and we were trying to gaff them, and we were actually rolling some of them over, you know, but they just taken no notice. They just kept going and going, and this is before daylight saving, you know, and we had the spotlight on them. And round the boat, was what just wasn't there, round the boat as far as you could see, you know. And we sat there watching them till 10:30, and the bloody battery went flat, and you know, we run out of power, so we went to bed. But we got up next morning and we got 70 in the pike nets, rolled up in the pike nets. If we had snapper nets there, you wouldn't have carried them, you know, that many, you know. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so that's what we used to do, and then the pier got smashed up at the lagoon in another storm where we used to sell the fish. And so what I had to do, we used to come in the lagoon, and the old man would take the boat round the station pier, and I'd take the truck over there. And we'd unload the fish there, and I'd take them back to the lagoon. I had an old FJ Holden with a canopy on it. We used to go around the end of the pier, and I used to get at the end of the pier selling the fish out the truck. And I had, you know, a business gradually grew and grew. And then they straightened the road up. It used to have a big, where Lonsdale was, it used to have a big bend like that. And anyway, in the 1960s, they straightened the road, and in the meantime, they diverted the traffic around into Dow Street, right past our house. So we put a sign up out front of the house, and we started selling the fish there, you know. And it got bigger and bigger, you know. And anyway, the old man sold the house, and he gave me the business. So we moved it up to where I live, and we built a shed out the back. And we started, people coming in there, you know. And we had the backyard, and we had this little, when we were getting it built, I got them to build a garage first so we had somewhere to sell the fish while they were building the rest of it, you know. And one day there, we were in there, and we had all this fish in there. And we used to have I had this table, something like that, with the boxes on it that was on an angle like that. And all these people are in the bloody thing. They're all trying to, and they're pushing, and everything collapsed. There was a weight of people, you know. There was that many people. That many people in there. We had to open the door and let them go through the door and go out through where I live, up the sideway, you know. And anyway, we had all them sorts of things with that. What happened then? But anyway, one day
I was saying how you used to clean a lot of the fish too.
Oh yeah, we used to clean it. I used to clean everything, you know, and I was getting up early hours in the morning, you know, and come home and I'd stand there all day cleaning fish, you know. And I says to Francis, I said, well, we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to shut it up or something, or I stopped cleaning the fish. They'll have to clean it themselves, you know. So I said to them, I said, that's it, no more fish cleaning. You know, I said, I can't keep up with it, you know. Anyway, we lost a lot of customers over it, mainly Australian people. But as far as the Greeks and the Italians and that was concerned, they just come in and bought it. There was that many of them, you know. And we used to catch pilchards down the pier with the hoop nets. They had these big hoop nets, 10 foot round, 3/8 spring steel. We'd make a big hoop out of them, you know. And we used to catch pilchards off the pier. We used to get spuds, boil spuds up, chuck them in the water. It used to attract them. And but we caught heaps of pilchards. We used to just catch them for bait. But then we woke up the migrants. That's what the migrants wanted, you know. They started buying the pilchards off us, you know. I went up the market one morning, and this fisherman from Geelong was up there. His name was Billy Vienna. And anyway, he had a boatload of trout. And I said, he wasn't very happy. I said, what's going on, Bill? He said, oh, look at these trout. They're beautiful trout. He said, they won't take them. I said, why? He said, oh, they're from Geelong. He said, they're full of petrol, you know. I said, what are you going to do with them? He said, I'm going to take them down the tip and dump them. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do with you, Bill. I'll give you £1 a box for 10 boxes. So I'll take a chance on it. So he gave me the 10 boxes of trout. So I took them home and iced them down and that, you know. And one migrant ship was going out about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There was another one coming in about 4 o'clock. So the pier was packed with Greeks. So I got up the end of the pier. When the ships come in, they're all leaving, and then we're standing there, 2 bob each, trout. They're buying them 8 and 10 at the time. You know. I thought if they got petrol in them, we won't see them anymore. And anyway, we took a couple home and cooked them. I tell you what, they had petrol in them. They stank. But anyway, you do anything. It was the easiest £50 I ever made. Anyway, I started when I was about 14, I started taking fishing parties. I used to take half a dozen blokes out and boat fish catching, you know. They used to pay me five quid for taking them out. And I used to go out and hook and whiten and hook and snapper and, you know, things like that. And anyway, as I got older, I give that away. That I couldn't stand drunks. They were always piss pots, you know. But anyway, So as I got a little bit older, I got into the long line and snapper, and that was the thing, you know. Anyway, when I was 20, it's one of the best years of my lives, you know. I met this beautiful girl. There she is, over there. Yeah. I let her, you understand, she was beautiful. It still is. I was gone. That was it. Yeah. 62 years ago, and I'm still in love with her. Look at that. That's major day, isn't it?
Margaret says to tell them about how you found the volunteer.
The volunteer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we'll get around to the boats. We'll get around to the boats. Yeah. We're not ready for the boats yet. Yeah. Yeah, that's what.
We're up to the romance part.
Yeah. Anyway, me and Frances got married, and anyway, that winter things weren't very good, was they? The weather was bad. It was blowing, and we were bloody near broke, weren't we? You know. Anyway, I had this mate of mine. His name was Alec Mickey, and he used to do a bit of flounder spearing. Anyway, we were home it was 9 o'clock, believe it or not, and we were in bed. We never even had a television set. Pretty cold, miserable night, wasn't it? And he come knocking on the door, and I goes to the back door, and he's standing there, and he's got these two big fish, about that long. I didn't even know what they were. And he said, have a look at this. I said, what are they, Alec? He said, I don't know. He said, I think they call them kingfish, you know, but they wasn't. And anyway, he says, go and put your pants on and come with me. I'll show you where they are. So I got in the truck with him, and he took me down the station pier. And you know where the Spirit of Tasmania comes in? Well, in front of it there used to be, and it's still there, there's a little jetty there. There's just the piles are there now. It's got no decking on it. And we went down there, and he shot a light under the pier. Now, this is before the car park and that was there, and the water was still going up under the bridge. And anyway, there's all these old piles from the original railway pier there. And he shone the light in there, and it was full of fish, full of these fish, this big. You know, and they were just laying there like them snapper were, but they were all facing the tide. And they were just there, and their tails are going like this. And I said, oh, God. So I gets my old man. Despite this time, it's about midnight. So we goes home, and I got in a dinghy and rowed it over there. I got one of my mates out of bed. And my old man, the only thing we had in the shed that we thought we'd catch them, we had some gummy nets, 5-inch mesh. So we got 4 or 5 nets, and we got in as close to the beach as we could go with the net, tied it to a pile, and we went up the side of the pier. Now, when you get just before the bow of the Spirit of Tasmania, there's a spot there you can get through the pier. We went through there, down the other side, and back to the beach again, so we had them cut off, you know. But the nets were too shallow. Most of them were going over the top of it. So anyway, we went back to where we started, and we started running the nets, one after the other, you know. We went round 3 times. I had a Valiant ute, and I filled the back of it up 3 times. And by then it was starting to break day, as we thought we'd better get out of it, you know. Well, it shouldn't be under there. Yeah. So anyway, like I say, I didn't know what they were. So anyway, at the time the weather was crooked. Wind was westerly, cold, blowing. Anyway, I took them up to market, and I backed into the jump there, and I went in to see Jack Miraculous. I said, look, Jack, I got some fish out here. I said, come on, you better have a look at them. I don't know if they're any good. He come out and he said, what are they? I said, I don't know. And he says, come out and he says, oh, they're mulloway. He said, they're jewfish. He says, are they any good? He said, oh, bring them in. Anyway, he brought them in and started auctioning them, 2 and 6 a pound. 25 cents a pound. And I think, Jesus Christ, that's all right, isn't it? You know? Anyway, I was on. Every opportunity we got. 6 weeks, 5,000 quid each.
Wow.
Paid for our house, paid for me car. We're off and running, weren't we? By that time the spring came, the snapper came, the pike came. We never looked back, you know. And talk about fish. I was home one day and this lady come there, and she says, I want a bit of advice. I says, well, what about? She said, about fish. I said, what sort of fish? She said, is there any fish in the Albert Park Lake? I said, well, I don't really know. I says, why is that? She said, oh, we wanted to put on a thing for, pay 10 shillings or something to catch the biggest fish, you know, for what was the crippled people? Urella, yeah. And I said, well, look, I said, I don't know. I said, the only way to find out is to put some nets in there, and you're not allowed to do that. And she says, oh, who should I, is any good to me seeing anybody? I said, well, go and have a talk to them at the fisheries. But when she went up there and spoke to them, and she told them what it was for, you know, they told me, they rang me up and told me that they'd give me permission to do it once, but I could only use large mash, you know. And so I had this 12-foot plywood dinghy, and this little mate of mine, he was only a boy at the time, his name Russell Frost, and he turned out to be a crayfisherman down Apollo Bay. And we come over the lake here. It was in the summertime, you know, beautiful night. So he gets in the dinghy, went out the island. I thought, if there's any fish here, it's where the grass is. So we went out the island, and we went right round the island, shot the nets round the island. So anyway, we gets up early next morning, and we comes down here, goes out in the dinghy. When we shot the nets, you could see the corks floating. When we went back next morning, you couldn't see the corks. Every now and again, we see a big splash. So I got to the end of the nets, and I felt them kicking like this, you know. Wow. So we starts pulling them in the boat, and up come these bloody big carp. This bloody big with just their noses stuck in, you know. You're just plucking them out like grapes, you know. Anyway, we filled the dinghy up, you know. Anyway, I took them up the bloody market, still alive. You know, they stop alive for a long time. I took them up the market, and same place again, Jack Mariculus, and he said, "Oh, I'll bring them in." Anyway, I got 500 quid for them. Yeah. But what I done, I donated to Uralla. I give them the money to Uralla, you know. So there's a few less carp in the lake.
Did they have the competition?
Hey?
They
had the competition. They caught nothing. Yeah. But I had a few little experiences along the way too, with the Queen. The Britannia was in the station pier, you know. Anyway, it was in the summertime, and we were. I used to catch a lot of flounders, and I had my net shot between the lagoon and the station pier. And anyway, we're there in the morning. Oh, I was on my own actually, pulling the nets. I had this big 15-foot fiberglass dinghy. I'm pulling the nets, and I was getting quite a lot of flounders. She knows all about the flounders, and we're going along pulling these flounders out the nets. The coppers spotted me. They only had a little boat then, 2 coppers, and I knew the copper. He was a sergeant. He comes over. "What are you doing, Dugga? You're not supposed to be here, you know." And I says, "Oh, we're not going to be here long." I forget his name. But anyway, he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "We're catching flounders." I said, "I tell you what," I says, "how about I give you half a dozen and you give them to the Queen?" He says, "Oh, I don't know." He says, "I'll go over and see." So he went alongside the gangway, and a bloke come down, we seen him walk down the gangway, and he's talking to him, you know, and the bloke went up the gangway and come back with something. And he come over, and he handed me this bucket with Her Majesty. It was painted royal blue with Her Majesty's Royal Yacht Britannia on it. And I put the 6 biggest flounders I got in it. And off he went, and he went over to it and went alongside. And the bloke come down and took the bucket. Now, whether the Queen got him or not is a different matter, but yeah, so, yeah.
Might have been the corgis.
Yeah. And then when we were catching the flathead in the 1950s, the National Service was on. There used to be 4 corvettes come in the station pier every Friday. They used to be based at Flinders. They used to take National Service trainees, train them out in the Bass Strait and that. And anyway, when we'd be going out of a morning, it'd be about the time they were coming up the bay. And we'd usually see them at the lightship, you know, but as we going past, we used to give them away. They used to dip their ensigns, you know. Yeah, and all things like that, yeah. And what else? Yeah.
What about Prince Philip?
Oh, Prince Philip.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're under the station pier, getting mussels at the time of the Olympic Games. Me and my old man, we had this 15-foot dinghy. We used to get mussels and sell them. And anyway, when we were in there, I don't know if some of you people would have remembered it. They had a big launch called the Commissioner. It was an old Fairmile. And it went past us and went in the station pier. And it normally never had a mast in the middle of it, but it had the Australian ensign on the bow. It had the Harbour Trust ensign on the stern, and this vacant flagpole in the middle. Anyway, we're under the pier, and we come out from under the pier, and it backed out from the west wing, turned around and went up the pier. It passed us about 30 feet away, and there's these two blokes standing up in the front of the bridge, dressed in navy uniform, swords and all, you know. And I looked at it and I said to me, "Oh man, that's the Duke of Edinburgh," you know. And we're going, hey, and this is true. They turned around, they turned around and looked at us and went, that's a true story. Yeah. But anyway, then I started catching snapper on the long line, you know. I caught a lot of snapper. I was home. Me and my old man was catching a lot of snapper on the long line out off Point Cook. And I was blowing hard. And my old man said, "I've had enough," you know. I said, "I'm not going." Who should walk in the yard but Mick? He'd just come home from work, I think, or something, I don't know. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Nothing." I said, "You're going fishing." You know. 3 days we went out, didn't we? Yeah. 3 days we caught 600, 200 each day, 25 boxes each day. Yeah, and by geez, we earned them, didn't we? Yeah. Yeah. Another day, me and my son, we went out one morning and on the long line, and we had 3 shots. We got 600 in the morning. We went back in the afternoon and got another 600. There was thousands of them. Yeah. But then I got involved with the boats. I had this mate of mine. His name was Charlie Strong. I've talked about him before. He was a little fella. Anyway, he come to my place one day and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "Want to come for a ride?" I said, where are you going?" He said, up to Walsh's boatyard. He said, I said, "What are you going there for?" He said, I seen a scallop boat for sale in the paper, you know, this morning, you know, in the Age. He said, "I'm interested in it." I said, "Oh, well, come on, we'll go and have a look at it." So we went up there, and it was a heap of shit, you know. I said, "No, don't." Yeah, even he was awake up to it. I said, you know. Anyway, we're walking out of the yard, and there was a big gum tree, and it was when containerisation first started, and there was 3 or 4 containers there. As I'm walking out, I seen the stern of this boat sticking out, and it was yellow, painted yellow. It was a double ender. And I said to Charlie, I said, "Wait a minute, Charlie, look, there's an old double ender out here." I said, "Come, we'll have a look at it." So we goes around and walks around the corner. I looked at it and I said, "Jesus Christ, Charlie, it's the Volunteer. It's my old man's old boat, you know." He'd sold, when I was about 15, my grandfather died, you know, and my old man had the Volunteer, and it belonged to me grandfather. But anyway, he had 2 sisters and 2 brothers. And of course, what come up with, what are you going to do about the boat? And at the time, he knew this other boat, which was the Pearl, was for sale. So what he done, he sold the Pearl, the Volunteer, and he bought the Pearl. But anyway, you wouldn't believe it, the people who bought the Volunteer was the Sorrento Sailing Club. They bought it for a rescue boat, and there used to be a crane on the lagoon. So they pulled it up on the lagoon. We pulled it up on the lagoon, and they give it a coat of paint, but they painted in yellow and blue stripes. And at the time, it was in September, and Port Melbourne was playing bloody Williamstown for the bloody grand final. Well, everybody's seen the bloody boat on a pair painted blue and yellow, which was Port Williamstown. And bloody Williamstown kicked the shit out of Ports. So we were in a bad way, you know, in Port Melbourne with the Port Melbourne Football Club. Yeah, but anyway, they took the old boat away. The last I seen of it was it disappearing over the horizon down towards Portsea, you know. Anyway, I always thought, you know, well, maybe I'll be able to get it back one day, and I never ever got down there looking for it or anything, you know. I went down there a couple of times and never had a clue where it was. And anyway, I spotted this old boat, and it was a derelict. They'd put a cabin on it, and all the deck had caved in, all the cabin had caved in, but it was half full of water. You could have bailed it out, you could have lifted it up and put it in the water, it would have floated. But somewhere along the line, someone had shaved the stem back, right back to the planking, and they'd built this steel keel underneath it. They'd taken the centre case out, and it had like a flat keel underneath, which saved it, stopped it from hogging, you know, kept it straight. And it was all bolted through, and it was attached to, they had this stem around it. I don't think it had a stern post on it, did it, Mick? Can you remember? Yeah, I can't remember. But anyway, I tried to buy it, but they wanted 2,000 quid for it, or dollars. It was dollars. And, you know, if I'd known what I know now, I would have given them anything for it, you know, because it was in reasonable order then. But that was 1974, you know, so it was 6 years before I got it. But in that time, it went through 2 or 3 different owners, and everyone made it worse. The last person who ever had it, because it had opened up, but they had run an angle grinder through all the planking. They must have had ideas of putting spline in it, you know. But anyway.
Which boat is this one that's on the Vision now? Is that the Pearl or Volunteer?
That's the Volunteer. Yeah. Yeah, that's down, yeah. I remember that day, I come into the lagoon and picked them up. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so anyway, I'm on there. I'd been out fishing, and I came home, and Francis says, there's been a phone call from you. There's this bloke called Harry Clark. You know Harry Clark, of course. And he happened to be working up there, you know. And he's talking to these people. They were going to chop it up. It was in that bad way, you know, and whoever the last owner had been had dumped it, you know. Anyway, Harry says, oh, look, he said, don't do it yet. I'll get in contact with someone and see if they're interested. So anyway, I rang them up, and I asked them about the boat, and they says, well, what are you willing to pay for it? I says, well, the condition it's in, I said, I'll give you $100 for it. He said, oh no, worth more than that. I said, well, please yourself. He said, I said, you're only going to burn it, you know. I said, $100 is better than nothing. He said, I'll get back to you. They rang me back later. They said, you can have it for $100 as long as you have it out of here by Monday, you know. So I got on to him. In the meantime, they'd built this bloody big structure on it, didn't it? It looked like Noah's Ark, didn't it? You know. And Mick come over with a chainsaw, and he went through with a chainsaw and chopped it all off. And because I kept going fishing, but he undone all the bolts, didn't you, through the keel, was bolted, and anyway, we went over there on the Monday morning to get it. We went over there with a truck and trailer. We had lumps of wood, we had jacks. And the bloke says, what are you doing with all this shit? I said, that's to lift the boat off, you know. And And he said, oh, yeah. He said, I'll lift it up with a crane for you for $50. I said, that'll do me. So he just brought it over and put a couple of slings round and dumped it on the trailer, you know. Anyway, we took it over to Mick's at the back of his house, and he played around with it there cleaned it all up and had the best, didn't you? Painted, give it a good coat of red lead and that till we decided what we could do with it, you know. Anyway, when this happened, the paddock was vacant at the back. There was no one using it. It was over the Christmas holidays. The factory's use store was knocked off for a month in them days, you know. And I went and seen the boss in there, and I asked him if it'd be all right if we put a boat in there and do some work on it over the holidays. He said, yeah, and that's all right. I said, yeah, so we done that, and we was there for about 15 years. Yeah, but anyway, we went and got it and we put it in there, and we only took about 3 months to do it, didn't we? We got it in there at Christmas time. We put it in the water about June, I think. Wow. You know? And yeah, but when we put it in the water, when I was doing it, I got involved with. I had this mate of mine. He used to buy snapper off me. He had the restaurant at the St Kilda Marina, and his name was Dennis Wilkins. And he come to my place one day and he says, do you know anywhere there's any old cooter boats? Because we never used to call them cooter boats, we used to call them cliff boats. That right, Jack? Yeah. Right. Anyway, I knew where there was half a dozen, you know, so I told them about them. They went and bought them, you know. And anyway, Dennis and Tim Phillips and Will Beaulieu, they went for a ride down to South Australia, and they bought 3 cooter boats. They bought the Muriel, the Muriel and the Rita. And the Rita. Hey?
Waddle and Rita.
Waddle and the Rita, yeah. Yeah, and Will Beaulieu never bought one. No, they've just built the 2. But anyway, Tim Phillips had the Muriel, and he got Jack Norling to help him do that. And this Dennis asked me if I knew anyone could do it. I put him on to Charlie. And he brought it up there, and we put it in a Nissan nut up over Fisherman's Bend. And Charlie was going over there working on it. I used to go over there and hold the dolly and that for him and give him a hand, you know, when I had the time. And anyway, in the meantime, we'd found the volunteer, and we were just going to patch it up and use it as a fishing boat, you know. And Dennis come in there one day, you know, and he's saying, oh, have a look at this beautiful boat, you know. It's sitting there. It was a great big full-body cooter boat, the Rita was, you know. Needed about 5 bloody tonne of ballast in it to push it down in the water. And he said, oh, have a look at it, blah, blah. And I said, Jesus Christ, Dennis. I said, I reckon one of my double-enders would beat that, you know. He said, what? I said, have a look at it. I said, that's going to be like a tug in the water, you know. And he says, you know what? He said, you people are all the same. I said, what do you mean? He said, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? Yeah. And I never said nothing, but when he left, I said, look, Charlie, I said, change your tack with the boat. I said, we're going to put a centre case back in it and a mast and sail, you know. But where I made the big mistake was, I put a fishing boat rig on it. It only had a 21-foot mast in it, and a lug sail and a stem-headed jib, you know. But the bloody thing sailed like a dream, didn't it, Mick? You know, we put it in the water and the wind hit it, you know, and off it went, you know. And when I look back on it, you know, the way it goes now with the sails it's got on it now, don't it? You know, if I had it rigged that way, Christ knows what we'd have won in it, you know. Anyway, the first race we had it, well, I organised a race at the Port Melbourne Yacht Club. They jumped on the opportunity, you know, got about 20 cooter boats up there, you know. It was one of the first races they had. Anyway, started off, you know, and they all went that way, and I went that way, you know. they went, I knew the wind had come more southeast as the day come on, you know. Anyway, just towards the finish, there's one cooter boat in front of me, and the bugger hit the buoy when he went round it, you know, and the weather buoy. And he didn't do another turn, you know, and I said to him, he's touched the buoy, but no one else seen him. Now, we didn't protest or nothing. Anyway, we finished up coming second, and we were quite happy with that. We won, because he had a beautiful suit of sails on it, had a 26-foot mast in it, and a great big full-size cooter boat rig in it. Guess what it was? The friggin' Reader. Yeah. But that's how I got in there. But anyway, then we started sailing it round and that, and we took it down Portsea a couple of times with that little rig on it, and we never come nowhere in it. You know, we were only learning too. We were only mugs, and but anyway, then bigger mast, biggest bowsprit, lug rig, you know, and then I decided to turn this Pearl into a sailing boat. Well, that was a game changer, you know. The bloody thing, that bloody thing just tears through the water, don't it? You know. Yeah. So anyway, when I started taking it, racing it, 1984, I won the Portsea Cooter Boat Cup in that, you know. And I won it first across the line and first on handicap.
Wow.
You know, and anyway...
With a pretty average crew too.
Yeah. I used to sail it with Karen, my other daughter, and usually with Mick's son, Andrew, you know. Yeah. Now and again, my other son, David, would go, but he wasn't as much interested in it as Andrew. Andrew was a fanatic. He was a fanatic. He was a really, really, really good sailor. Yeah.
Yeah. Poppy and Andrew at the same time here.
Yeah, there they are. There's my old man and Andrew. Pulling the bloody... My old man used to love that. He had a Tommy axe. He used to get stuck in them with a Tommy axe. I could have shot him. I could have shot him one time when we were doing the volunteer, you know. The two top planks on the port side, on the starboard side, were stuffed, you know, really in a bad way. And he was breaking his neck to get these two planks off, you know. And me and Charlie ribbed the boat, all the boat, you know, this day. We virtually ribbed the whole boat in one day. Anyway, you just let them set, you know, a couple of days before you rivet them up, let the wood dry out. Anyway, the next day, I goes fishing, you know. When I come home, my old man had knocked the two top planks off. And what happened? The ribs fell out, you know. The only way to fix it was to pull them all out and do it again. But we never bothered, we just left it the way it was. So now she's got two different sides on her. One's round like that, the other one's like dishy like that. Yeah. But he used to break his neck with that bloody... He was dangerous with the axe, Tommy axe, wasn't he? Yeah. But anyway, yeah, we went. I was in the Cooter Boat Cup. I think it was maybe 2 years after. I forget now, or maybe it was the year before. I won it, but I went down there this particular day, and the wind was northerly uptown, blowing hard. But when we got down there wasn't much wind, and it was northerly, but not much. But there was this southwest change supposed to be coming in the afternoon, and you could see it down in the west. With the race started at 2 o'clock, you could see it in the west lifting up over the horizon. And anyway, we're sailing round, and I thought, I still had the lug sail in the boat then, but I had a lightweight one and a little storm sail. So I put the storm sail up and a little storm jib on her bow, but she was doing nothing, you know, we were getting nowhere. The other boats had their full rigs on, and they would have left us dead for dead. So I thought, I'll take a risk. I pulled it down, put the big sail up, I'll keep my eye on it. Off we goes. We gets round the first mark and there's about 2 or 3 boats in front of us, and we're heading out to the Chinaman's hut, Chinaman's, whatever they call it.
Chinaman's hat.
Yeah, Chinaman's hat. That was the mark. We're heading out towards that. I see it come over the hill. I could see it stirring up on the beach and that, you know. And it was me, my son David. He was 12 years old, and he had his mate Darren with him. Me and 2 kids. Anyway, first thing I done, I lug sail. You just undo one rope and down the lot comes. And then I got the jib off her. In the meantime, we just got a bare pole. We looked behind us and it's hit the cooter boats. Well, they were going in all directions, breaking masts, breaking sails, ripping sails. Tim Phillips broke his mast. Later on, told me he broke his mast. I said, "Oh, what a shame." And then we were great rivals, you know. Anyway, we got all this down. Anyway, I got the little sail out and got the jib ready and hooked it all up, ready to pull up. We waited till we got the Chinaman's hat, then we pulled it up. As we rounded it, we had to sail back to the shore. It was beat to windward. So I got this little sail off she went, you know. Bloody chain plates dragging in the water. And we're going in towards the beach, and we're tacking in, and in the meantime, she's half full of water. The bloody floor started floating. Never had no electric pump in it then, and I couldn't pump her out because I was sailing the boat and I only had the kid with me. Anyway, we got in close, and I'm sailing past the Port CP, and they come out in a rubber ducky and told me to go in. The race has been abandoned. I said, "What for?" "We're going round again." and they says, no, wasting your time, it's been... So we packed up, and it turned out there was 2 other boats went round too, you know, and there was a hell of a stink about it. The other 2 boats protested against it, you know. Yeah. But getting back to dragging the chain plates in the water, when I was young, when I first started fishing with my old man, the nets were cotton. So every Monday we used to put the boat alongside the pier at the lagoon round the breakwater. It had a rail around it, you know, and we used to pull the nets out on the rails and dry them, you know, take all the rotten bait out of them. And when we'd finished, we'd pack them up. We used to pack them up in bundles, tie them up. We'd chuck them back in the boat and chuck a tarp over them. Anyway, usually when we'd done this, it was usually a northerly wind. So anyway, I would have been about maybe 12, I suppose. And my old man says, "We'll go for a sail," you know. So we get the boat away, started the engine up and got it away from the pier. And he hoisted the sail and put the jib up, and it's blowing a hard northerly, you know. Anyway, we're sailing up and down the beach between the station pier and the lagoon and the drain pier, you know. And anyway, he said, here you are, sail it. So I gets hold of it like grim death, you know. Then I realised I don't need to do this. It's sailing itself, you know. Start sailing it like that. He said, don't drag the shit out of it. He said, just let it feel it. It'll tell you what it wants to do. When you was getting a puff, she was going up the windward, you know. And I'm thinking, we're going along, guts full of nets for ballast, chain plates dragging in the water, you know, and it was in my head. It had me, you know. And another thing too, we were down the bay one day, and there was a bloke from Williamstown named Keith Williams, St Kilda, and another bloke named Davies. They were both out. And the wind was southerly. They were a bit further down the bay than us. We were still lifting the nets. Anyway, I seen this beautiful... This is what made me paint the boats blue. They used to be white. And anyway, I looked down the bay and I seen this beautiful boat coming, you know, blue. He had it painted blue. was in April. They used to pull the boats up in March and paint them before the machine opened in April. And she'd just been painted. And he come along, and like I say, they still had big sails in them. He come along and he went past us, and she's laying over with a bloody bone in her teeth, rooster tail on her stern, and she's laying over, and they're standing there taking the flatted out the nets, and he give us a wave, and she just sailed away from us, you know. And I thought, oh, how is this, you know? And anyway, another day there, we're out in a volunteer, and she had a rugby in her. And we're out off Werribee, and it was southeast, and it was bloody cold, I tell you. And we couldn't get the bastard going, the bloody timing had slipped on it. And, you know, there was rough and that, you know. So anyway, the old man hoisted the sail, you know, and off we went, you know, in the volunteer. And she was just charged. She charged up the bay, you know, and, you know, the water was streaming off her, you know, and I thought, oh. But it was in my head, you know, and I never ever forgot it. And I always remembered that when I started sailing them, you know, I thought I'll make them sail like that, you know. Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, I got the pearl going, and I had I just had the volunteer going, and Charlie was building 18-foot bloody plywood boats for the fishermen, you know, and net dinghies. And one of the Kents at Port Arlington was getting them to build him one, you know, and Brian Kent, I saw him today. I had to go to a funeral this morning at Geelong. One of the fishermen down Port Arlington died. And half a dozen of the fishermen were there, and I was talking to them. And one of them was Brian Kent, but he rang me up, this is 40 years ago, and he had a boat down there, a 28-foot double-ender, and he says, look, he said, we don't want the old boat anymore. He says, do you think Charlie would exchange the boat for the tinny, for the flatty? I said, oh, I don't know, but I'll talk. And said, Charlie said, no, I can't do that. He said, I'm broke. He said, I need the money, you know. So what I done, I bought it, you know, and I give it to him. I gave it to him. I said, Charlie, that's for helping me fix the volunteer up. Oh, and he was happy as a pig in shit, you know. No, anyway, he fixed the Elsie up, and then I had a bit of opposition. Charlie started getting a little bit towy with his boat, you know. So we used to go out there racing one another. But anyway, I'd go down the lagoon. Charlie lived up at Fisherman's Bend. He had a little van. Anyway, but what I used to do, I used to go down the lagoon, I'd get in the boat, and I'd sail across the end of the station pier, not across the end of the Princess Pier. And when I'd go around the end of the Princess Pier, he had this big boat out the front of his house he was building at the time. He used to spot me. I used to see, all of a sudden, you'd see the van come up backwards, up over the bridge, down the lagoon, in his boat, off he'd come, and out we go, you know. But he always used to have to go home by 5 o'clock, because he used to have to cook the tea. His missus used to make him cook the tea. But we had great times doing that, and there was one time there, where it was at the station pier. It was a hard novelty, and me and David had the Pearl in there, and we still had a little mast in her, an old sail and that. But Charlie was out in the Elsie, and Andrew and my old man was in the volunteer, and they were racing one another up and down the beach out off the lagoon. So I said to David, I says, come on, we'll rig the old boat up and we'll give them a go. And had no centre case or nothing in it, you know. But anyway, we got out there, you know, we were all right sailing off the wind with it, you know, it wouldn't sail into the wind. But anyway, I don't know if you remember this, they used to have a little aeroplane, a little flying boat they used to call it the flying tadpole. But it used to go along the beach looking for sharks, you know, broadcasting the sharks. But they used to broadcast, and they said, oh, we're flying over Port Melbourne now, and these three magnificent old boats with red sails sailing up and down, you know. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, then I started buying them, because I knew all the old fishermen and that, you know, and I told them down Geelong, when you finish with your boats, ring me up and I'll buy them off you, you know. Anyway, one part of the pitch there, I had 13 boats tied up in St Kilda Boat Harbour on various moorings. You know, and when we'd finish one, we'd do another one, you know. But it just got bigger and bigger. Now I own seven boats and 3 dinghies and 1 plastic dinghy. But it's all good, you know. It's kept me alive. I had to give up fishing 6 years ago. I had no choice really. But yeah, I had plenty of good years. I enjoyed every minute of my life. I got no complaints. If I snatched tomorrow, I would be happy. Wouldn't worry me. Anyone got any questions?
Where's the volunteer now?
Where's the volunteer now?
Down St Kilda.
Have a look out in the summertime and you'll see us going up and down
There's a bloke up
between
there.
St Kilda and Port Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever fallen out of the boat?
Have I ever fallen out of one? Well,
Oh, a professional like this would never fall out. There's 2 times I've been in the water. 3. Yes, 3.
Now, I'll tell you about one of them for a start. We were fishing down Corio Bay down Lara. We're in a tinny. My son had this 15-foot tinny. It was a bastard of a thing. Had a terrible bow on it, no buoyancy. Anyway, he had his nets shot up near the Point Wilson Pier. We went down there in the morning. It was the second last day in June. It was bitterly cold. There was a little drizzly rain, about 5 or 10 knots of westerly wind, and it was bitter. Anyway, we got in the tinny. He's standing down the stern with a tiller between his legs, with his hands in his pockets, like that. I got a rope on the cleat up in the bow, and I'm standing in the middle of the boat, hanging onto the rope, because if you up the bow, it's going jarring your back. I was standing there riding it like a horse. Anyway, we're going along, and we got about halfway there. And the next thing I know, the bloody thing's up on its side like this. It run down a sea, just it caught a little wave. We're doing about 20 knots. Run down a wave, it digged its nose in and it went up like that on its side. And I dived in. I didn't get thrown out of it. I dived in head first and I hit the water. I didn't even lose, luckily I didn't lose my hat. I had a woolen hat on, because you lose the heat out of your head. It goes out of your body, out. And anyway, as I'm going down, I thought, shit, that's done it. I thought, I'm going to die here. I thought I'm either going to drown, but if I go up there, that bloody thing's going to cut me out in half. It was going round and round in circles on top of me, you know. Still, the engine's still going. So anyway, I thought, well, I got to take a chance on it. So I come up, and what it was doing, as it was going round, I was going away. And it was about from here to the wall over there, away from me when I come up. And because what I thought it was David in the boat looking for me. And then I looked and he's in the water over there. But silly him chucked all his clothes off. He had just had his pants on and a t-shirt. He took his wet weather gear and everything off. You know, I never even lost my rubber boots. But anyway, my first thoughts were to get rid of the boots. But then I found I was buoyant. I had wet weather gear pants on. I had a coat on with elastic around it here, was tied here. So I was kind of dry up here. So and he started swimming to the boat. I said, don't do that. I said, if that propeller itch, it'll cut you in half. He said, well, what are we going to do? I says, well, we're going over there. There's a stick on the end of the reef out in front of the quarry. Anyway, he had a watch. And it was 7:30 in the morning. Anyway, you couldn't swim like this with that gear on. It was going like paddling like that. Took us an hour and a half to swim to it. We got there at 9 o'clock. Anyway, because I thought someone might have seen the boat going around in circles from the quarry, and come and got us, but no one, no sign of a soul. But when we went down there that morning, my nephew Andrew's car and trailer was there, so he was out fishing somewhere. But we didn't know whether he was up where we were somewhere or over Point Henry. Anyway, we decided we'd hang on to the pole till 9:30. If there's no sign of him, we'll see if we can swim ashore. But if we had have, the way the cold was, we'd have died on the beach.
Yeah.
There was nowhere to go. The quarry was up there, but the thing is, but it's amazing what you can do if you think you're going to die, don't it? I most likely would have got up there and ran. But anyway, we were just about thinking about swimming, and we saw him coming. He was heading straight back to Lara, but he spotted the boat. You know, in the meantime, the engine had stopped. Anyway, he went over to it, and he seen there was no sign of us, and he come straight to us. Afterwards, I said, "What made you come in there?" And he said, "Well, if I went in the water," I thought, "if I went in the water, where would I go?" Yeah, but he went to pull me out the water first, and I said, "No, get David. He's in a bad way." So he pulled him out the water. He just laid on the floor in the boat. He was rooted. He was buggered. But anyway, this was the worst part of it. I was sitting in the boat, and the wind was still westerly, cold. We got to go back to the boat ramp. His boat's doing about 20 mile an hour, so we're doing about 30 mile an hour of winds coming over the deck, and it was just bitter. I was going, and I started like this. The whole my whole body, I couldn't stop it. It didn't matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop shaking. Anyway, when we got back to the boat ramp, they lifted David out the boat, you know. But I said, I didn't let them lift me out the boat. I crawled out on my hands and knees. I made it my business to get out on my own self, you know. But anyway, I thought, what are we going to do? We got in the car, turned the heater on, and you know that was doing nothing. But there was a hut there, and there was smoke coming out the chimney. So they took us over there and knocked on the door, and the bloke took us in. They had a little kerosene heater, and this is no bullshit, but it was school holidays, and there was 2 kids in there, and they're sitting there watching the television. What do you think they were watching? They were watching the Titanic. But just as we walked in the door, and this is true, the bloody thing was sinking. Anyway, we were sitting there, you know, and David said, "You got a shower. The bloke says, "Yeah," in there, and he got in and he says, "Oh, it's cold water." There was no hot water in it. You know. Anyway, we rang up Francis and told her to come down and bring us some dry clothes and some clean wet weather gear, you know. But in the meantime, ambulance come from the Geelong Hospital, paramedics. Someone at the boat ramp had rang them up. Now, they wanted to take us to hospital. Yeah. I said, "No, we're not going to hospital, mate. We've got to go out and get our nets." But he put a thing on and took me blood pressure, you know. And he asked me what had happened, and I told him, and he said, "Geez," he said, "how did you survive that?" And I told him about the shivering, and he said, "Well, what it is," he said, "it was your body closing down." He said, "You were dying." He said, "What happens?" He said, "When you stop shivering, you go to sleep." He said, "You don't," and you would have just went, he said, "You go to sleep and then you drown. You don't realise you're drowning, you just drown, you know." Yeah. He said, yeah. But then, talking about going in the water, when we had to put a new deck on the Pearl. And anyway, we put a new deck on it, and with the finishing touches, we had to put 2 bow rails on it. Anyway, when we put one on, but when we were bending the second one, it curved, you know, it twisted. So what we had to do was just leave it. We never had another lump of wood to make another one, and it was some sort of a race or something. I think it might have been when the tall ships were coming. we needed to get it back in the water, you know, so we thought we'll leave the rail off. Next time we pull it up, we'll finish it. So anyway, I goes down to St Kilda one day have a sail. I just got a pair of shorts on and a pair of knee boots, and the wind was a nice little southerly. So I gets in the boat and off I goes down the bay, and you know, bloody big rig and everything on it. I gets down there and I turn around, starts coming home, and I come bloody eastly, hard, you know. So I had to, it was a good fast run back to St Kilda, you know, and I was on the right angle for it, you know. But when I got to St Kilda, I don't know if you've seen the Largo out there, the big black yacht. At the time the boat was moored out there. So anyway, I sailed into the beach, turned around, and in the meantime, you've got to remember all the deck was wet, I was wet, and I sailed out to the dinghy. I'm heading towards the dinghy. I let the sail go, let the jib go, and she's running up to the dinghy. So I run up the bow, let the tiller go, run up the bow, jumped on the deck, hit the deck and went like a went over the bow like a torpedo, just like that. And I went plonk in the water, and I come up and the boat's heading towards the breakwater. Anyway, as she went past, the sheet rope off the jib was hanging in the water, and I grabbed it, and don't ask me how, but I pulled myself back in the boat. Wow. And I got that back just in time to turn the boat round before she ran in the rocks. And the other time, me and Karen and David was it? Yeah, we were going out, we were going in this Victoria 150 year. There was 10 races or something we went in, wasn't it? Day after day. And we're going out, and I went up on the bow to put the jib up, and I don't know why, but I fell off the bow, didn't I?
Yeah, you just went...
I must have slipped or something, you know, but I went in the drink, didn't I?
David and I didn't dare say anything. We just looked at each other. You weren't too happy about that.
Hey?
You weren't too happy about that. Yeah.
Just as well no one's seen it, wasn't it?
Well, I saw it.
Yeah. What about the coppers? About 2 years ago, I was down when we pull the boats up, we like to pull them up when it's blowing hard southwest or something like that, you know. Get a big high tide. So it was the Pearl. I goes down there and gets in the boat. It's blowing about 25 knots. And I motors her back to the marina. And before I went over to one of the other boats and chucked all the my safety gear and that in it, you know, because I wouldn't have to cart it home. So anyway, I goes in the marina and I gets up to the marina, and my mate's gone round in the car, Phil. And as I goes round the corner, the bloody coppers are there in their bloody rubber ducky, you know. So I goes alongside the pier, ties it up, and the coppers come over and I says, how you going? I said, all right. Where's your life jacket? I says, because I'd taken one of them things, but it was on the floor next to me, and I said, I got it here. He said, why haven't you got it on? I said, I had it on. I took it off when I got in the marina. He said, no, not good enough, you know. So anyway, he says, where's your safety gear? I said, I left it at St Kilda in the other boat. He said, oh, you know, no. And then he says, is the boat registered? I says, no. He said, why not? I says, well, it's a sailing boat. I said, you know, if it's got a mast and sail in it, you don't need to have it registered. He said, oh, yes, you do. You know? He said, if it's never had an engine in it, it's all right, you know. Yeah. Anyway, they were really nasty, really pair of nasty bastards, you know. And they're really... he said, don't you realise that there's a strong wind and warning out for the bay? I said, what about it? I says, me and my old man used to bloody well go out that sort of weather in these bloody boats. You know, I says, that's what they're built for. You know? And you know, anyway, they give it. I said, look, enough's enough. You're going to find me, find me. You know, I said, I don't give a shit. You know, I said, it's only money. I said, and you're going to find me. I can tell you by your attitude. He said, we don't like your attitude. And I says, well, I don't like yours either. You know, I said, well, all right. I said to Phil, come on, we'll get the truck and pull the boat out the water. Anyway, they said, oh, you'll hear more about it. So I said, oh, go for your... They sent me a fine in the thing. $1,300 it cost me.
Wow.
Anyway, they got in their bloody rubber ducky and they're going out and they're going past me. I yelled out, hey, why haven't you got your life jacket on? You want to see the dirty look they give me. Yeah.
Send them a fine?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that enough?
Thank you very much.
And everything I told you there was real.